In our videos so far, we've seen an example of IRACing with a statute and IRACing with a case. But in each example, we only dealt with a single legal authority. Now, sometimes there might be other authorities that help define elements within this authority. Right? And so in that sense, there are multiple authorities. But there's only one legal authority that is being used for our analysis, that's answering our question. Right? These authorities just help us define elements or resolve elements within this. Okay, so we've just been using one legal authority. But of course, in real life, in reality, our legal analysis will usually draw on many different legal authorities. Usually there will be many authorities that guide our analysis. Right? Now, each authority will be slightly different. There's no reason to have two statutes that say the exact same thing. So if you have two statutes or two or more statutes that are relevant to a particular issue, it's because each statute addresses a slightly different part of the issue. Okay? The same is true with cases. No two cases will ever be the same. They're never exactly the same. Situations in life are always slightly different. So if you have two or more cases that are relevant to a legal issue, it's because each case gives a slightly different perspective. It addresses the legal issue from a slightly different angle. Okay, so the next skill that we're going to discuss is how to reconcile a bunch of different authorities that all relate to the same issue, the same legal issue, but all address the issue from a slightly different angle. This is called synthesis. Synthesis. Right? To be effective legal analysts, we need to learn to synthesize a rule from multiple authorities. This is how we draw out all of the nuances of the legal rule that we use for our analysis. Now, rule synthesis is actually something that you already know how to do. In fact, every child learns rule synthesis at a very early age. So imagine a child who asks his parent whether he can have some ice cream. Say it's right before dinner. Dinner's just about to go on the table, and the kid asks whether he can have some ice cream. Well, the kid's parent says, no, you can't have any ice cream right now. And maybe the parent stops what she's doing and explains very carefully why the kid can't have any ice cream. But more likely, if the parent is busy just trying to get dinner on the table, she doesn't explain why. She just says, we're about to have dinner. You can't have any ice cream until after dinner. Right? Well, based on this exchange, it's very reasonable for the child to think, oh, I guess the rule is you're not allowed to have ice cream, no ice cream, until after dinner. And the next day, the kid can test this rule out, right? The kid can ask for ice cream after dinner. And if the parent says yes, this will confirm the kid's understanding of the rule. No ice cream until after dinner. Right? But let's say the following week, the child asks for ice cream again. And again, it's before the child has had dinner. But this time it's several hours before dinner. It's not just right here, it's way up here. Right? In fact, the kid just had lunch. With some friends, came home, and dinner isn't scheduled for at least a few hours. Now the kid knows, or at least thinks, that the rule is you can't have ice cream until after dinner. But he does what kids do, and he asks anyway. And much to his surprise, his parent says, okay, well, we're not going to have dinner for a few hours, so you can go ahead and have a little ice cream. Yes. Right? Now the kid's like, awesome, yes, he can have ice cream. But now his idea of the ice cream rule is a little bit hazier. It's a little less clear than it was before. Before he thought the rule was that you can't have ice cream until after dinner. But now it seems like the rule is actually something different. Now it seems like the real rule is you can't have ice cream until after dinner unless dinner is several hours away. Right? That would be reasonable for the child to think the real rule is, because you can't have ice cream before dinner. You can't have it after dinner. And you can have it before dinner if dinner is several hours away. Okay, so now the next time the kid wants ice cream, he decides to play it safe. Right? He decides to play it safe and he asks for ice cream way before dinner time. So dinner is here. He asks for ice cream way up here. Way before dinner time. Right? Even more of a gap than this time. And he figures, well, if the rule is that you can't have ice cream until after dinner, unless dinner is several hours away, well, then I should be golden, right? It's only like, what, 11:30 a.m. Okay, dinner is at least 7 hours away. I mean, I haven't even had lunch yet. Okay, so lunch is down here. I haven't even had lunch yet. Dinner is several hours away. So when he asks for ice cream, he expects that his parent will say, sure, you can have ice cream. So he's devastated when his parent says, no, you can't have ice cream right now. We're just about to eat lunch. So after several exchanges like this, right, and they're all slightly different scenarios under slightly different circumstances, the child will probably figure out, even if the parent doesn't say it explicitly, the child will probably figure out that the actual rule is that you can't have ice cream if it's going to spoil your appetite for a meal. Right? So no ice cream if it will spoil your appetite for a meal. So it isn't just enough that it's still several hours before dinner. Right? The timing has to be just right so that the ice cream won't also spoil his appetite for lunch or breakfast if it's way up here. Okay? And he can check this rule by seeing this new rule, no ice cream if it will spoil appetite for a meal. He can check this rule by seeing if it's consistent with all the other times that the rule was applied. Right? So the first time he asked for ice cream was right before dinner. Well, eating ice cream right then would make him too full to eat dinner, so it makes sense under the real rule about not spoiling his appetite that his parent would say no. The next time it was after dinner, so that wouldn't spoil his appetite for the meal, and the parent said yes, and that's consistent with the real rule. The next time was a few hours before dinner, so having ice cream wouldn't spoil his appetite for dinner, and it was after he had lunch, so there was no risk of spoiling his appetite for lunch, so the rule worked there too. And then the last time was actually right before lunch. So having ice cream then would ruin his appetite for lunch. So it's consistent with the rule that his parent wouldn't let him have ice cream then. So now this child has just synthesized the real rule about having ice cream, at least in his house, all right? His jurisdiction, so to speak. Okay? So in his jurisdiction, he has synthesized the real rule about having ice cream. His parent may not have ever told him the real rule. In fact, the parent may not have even thought to tell him the real rule. Each time, his parent just said, we're about to have dinner, or we're about to have lunch. Right? We're about to have dinner, or we're about to have lunch. Okay? But the basis for the parent's judgment of no ice cream was actually this underlying rule about spoiling his appetite. So that's what rule synthesis is. It's looking at several examples of how an issue is addressed in slightly different situations, and then seeing what the outcomes were in each of those situations, and then finally gleaning from all of those examples what the real rule is.